These bottles contain the same water. They required roughly the same labor to produce. Yet one might sell for $1 and the other for nearly everything a desperate person owns. What changed? Not the labor in the bottle. The relationships surrounding the exchange changed. Welcome to democratic economy, where we follow the structure of the system to identify the underlying mechanisms of inequality. Use value is necessary for exchange. Nobody willingly gives up something valuable for a commodity that provides absolutely no use. That does not make use value harmful. In an ordinary exchange, both people trade away something with less use to them and receive something with greater use. The objects can exchange around their labor values while both parties still benefit. The problem begins when one party's need becomes leverage for the other. Return to the water bottle. At home, you can refuse the price. You can use the faucet, visit another store, or simply wait. In the desert, refusal may not be a meaningful option. The seller can use the buyer's extraordinary need to pull price far above the labor value embodied in the water. The transaction is technically voluntary. The buyer still chooses the water. Both sides receive a use value. But neither fact proves the exchange is equal. A choice between accepting an exploitative price and suffering a severe consequence is still a choice, but it is not equal bargaining power. This is why both people agreed is not a complete analysis of an exchange. We also have to ask what each person was able to refuse. The same structure appears in housing, food, healthcare, energy, and employment. If someone controls access to a necessity, the maximum price is no longer set by casual preference. It is set by how much pain the buyer can tolerate before going without becomes worse. That is use value operating as a buoyant force. It lifts price above labor value because the buyer needs what the seller controls. Artificial scarcity can increase that force. Suppose 10 apartments are available for 10 households. Now imagine an investor purchases 5 and leaves them empty while waiting for rents to rise. No additional labor was added to the apartments. Their housing use did not improve. But reduced access increases the leverage of those still offering units. Speculation can do something similar. Buyers may pay more than the labor value because they expect future buyers to pay even more. The immediate tangible use of the commodity becomes less important than its speculative use for resale. This can continue while new money or new buyers enter the market. But every step stretches price farther from its productive center. The separation matters for 2 reasons. First, it redistributes labor value. The buyer must give up more of the value represented by their own labor than the commodity required to produce. Second, it creates instability. A price far above labor value must be continually supported by need, restriction, debt, or expectation. If supply expands, alternatives appear, purchasing power collapses, or people stop believing the price will continue rising, the support for the inflated price disappears. Labor value then pulls the price back toward the gravitational center of socially necessary labor time. The greater the separation, the more violent that correction can become. Now apply this to employment. The employer needs labor to produce. The worker needs money to obtain the commodities required to live. These are both needs, but they are not equally distributed. The employer may have several applicants capable of performing the work. The worker may have only limited savings and bills arriving on fixed dates. The employer can replace one worker more easily than the worker can replace all income. That unequal use value affects the wage. The employer values a particular worker according to replaceability. The worker values the wage according to survival. The worker may therefore accept less than the value their labor creates, not because the labor produces little, but because their need for money is being used to determine the terms of exchange. This is the bridge from unequal market exchange to exploitation in production. But before we can measure that exploitation, we have to answer an objection. If labor value matters, does working longer automatically make something more valuable? What about useless labor, lucky discoveries, and differences in productivity? The answer is socially necessary labor time, which is where we turn next.